Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Melissa Zarem. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hi. Well, thanks. How are you?
Great. I was excited. Had a lot of fun selecting works of yours to show our audience, and in no particular order. I wanted to start with this one because I really felt it had a bang to it. I love the layering that's involved with this. I like the color palette, the drips, everything. Um, but I'm kind of curious to find out the forms that you're using in something like this. Are you inventing as you go along, or do you already have an idea about the way that the picture is going to go?
I rarely have an idea of where it's going to go. However, I often have something that is an inspiration for where I'm going to start.
Okay.
And sometimes where I start shows in where I end up. And in this case, I would say that is true. And other times I end up in a completely different spot.
Okay. So when you say you have a starting point, do you use is it a reference? Is it an idea? Is it a mark? What is it that gets these pictures moving?
It's often a mark, although like all my answers always feel like a hybrid of two things. So it's the materials, the mark, but as with all things, it's also the accumulation of all the things I'm thinking about over the course of my practice.
Okay. So it's like it's an accumulation picture.
Yeah, I think in some ways, almost all of my pictures are an accumulation of, both the history of my practice, the history of me, and then what am I playing with in that moment? What is the thing that's engaging me in that moment? And I don't like the word dialectic because people use it pretentiously, but it's a good word because it suggests a dialogue and a back and forth. And that is something that's always part of what I'm doing.
I wanted to, you touched on this in this last question, talk to you about your materials. So the vast majority of works that I saw of yours online were all done on paper.
Yeah.
And so is there a reason for that? Is it, do you just have a love affair of paper, or is it space issues, or why paper?
Nailed it. Both of those things are true.
Okay.
It's been a really long time. I work on paper. It is a very forgiving, flexible, absorbent material that is easy to layer. Um, so many medium will be friendly with it, but also storage is a real issue. I think I did a lot of oil painting early in my career, and I quickly learned that then you're stuck with a lot of oil paintings.
Right.
So switching to paper was a bit of an epiphany for that too.
So I wanted to ask this question specifically about this piece because it looks like you've got some mixed medias in there. Do you ever feel a need to prepare your papers beforehand, or do you just go straight on?
No, actually, one of the things that I love about paper is the absorbent nature of it. Preparing it would destroy the part of it that I really like. In fact, the pieces that go wrong are ones where there's so much buildup that the paper loses its absorbency sometimes, and I can't get that back.
Mhm. Do you always work on the same kind of paper? Because I noticed your sizes vary quite often. Are you buying large rolls and cutting them, or are you buying sheets? What's your preferred method?
All of the above. I have some really large rolls, and I do use those. Um, but I also will use scraps, and I have some large sheets in my flat file, and sometimes I'll start with a large sheet, and then as I'm working, I decided that it needs to be cropped, and I'll tear it down.
Okay.
And then sometimes I'll just decide that I want to do something really small. Um, the desire to work small actually came out of spite.
Okay, that's a story I gotta hear.
Well, I just had a few people that I was working on, large sheets of paper in these big gestural drawings. And a few people kept saying, you really need to work bigger. You need to work bigger. And I started to resent it. And I was
Okay.
like, this is where I'm comfortable right now. So, as a response to that, I mean, this is all in hindsight, I realized
Mhm,
my work just got smaller and smaller until I started making little pieces. I'm not exaggerating, that were the size of a business card.
mhm,
And it
mhm,
was like the freedom to do that, I think, was what allowed me to finally go big without it
mhm.
feeling like it was in response to someone else's demands on me.
I totally understand what you're saying because that's what I like about your work is that when you go small, you still have powerful imagery. I know a lot of artists that work big, and when they go small, they can't figure it out. There's not the same impact of it because they're hoping everything is just really large, and that's it.
I
Anyway,
appreciate
I got excited about this piece, so I know that there's a story here. So your work is on the left,
correct.
but it's somebody else's work is on the right. So I just put them together so we can see both works. And I
Yes,
assume it's kind of like a call and response between friends of yours that you're working on. So
correct.
tell me just a little bit about that.
I'm glad you picked from this series because this is one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. I have a collaborator named Elise Nicole, who is a printmaker and a photographer and a bookmaker. And she and I have been collaborating since 2007. So it's a long practice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in the pandemic, we weren't able to work together in person. So we did exactly as you suggested. It was a call and response. We would send a postcard in the mail that we'd created, and then the other would make something in response to that. So this is a pair, but actually, what I really liked was the show that we had at Cornell where they were all lined up in one long timeline, where you could see the whole sequence. And I worked in drawing, excuse me, drawing materials, and she pretty much stayed exclusively in photography for this. But it sort of, after you got involved in looking at it, they started to blend in a way that is hard to describe. It was,
So I was fascinated by it because of the fact of what you said earlier about the first piece about your starting points usually start from a mark or something. But here, I guess you're really forced to start with a source material and then you do a response to it. So it's like two different ways of working, yet you still have that same hand gestural mark that makes it obvious that it's yours. Did you find that you have a preference working one way or another?
hmm, I really enjoyed this one. I like them both, I
Okay.
guess.
I mean,
Um,
it's just
you
different. I
know,
was just curious if you had any hiccups working that way or if you could easily
mhm.
glide into both.
There were definitely hiccups. There are hiccups with everything.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, it's the push and pull again. There's nothing better than a good assignment, and
hmm
then there's also nothing better than the freedom to do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, right. That's why we become artists. So obviously I wanted to show this piece because this is the main image you have on your website.
Mhm.
And I'm curious about some of these elements because they're a little bit like that central circle that you've got going on and some other things. Uh, are you inventing those from whole cloth or are you using that from found materials?
That particular central circle is from a magazine from I think it was a knitting magazine from the 50s or something. And there are other torn elements from that same source in
Okay.
there. But those, I believe, I'm trying to remember, came after. I don't usually start with the collage materials of that kind. I have something that I'm working on, and um, and I had been collaging with those magazines, so I think those that was handy, and I found those bits that ended up in there.
This one
Sometimes I have
really
a bunch
works.
of, sorry,
Go ahead. I
I
just
was
said
just,
this one works.
yeah, thank you. Uh, Sometimes I have a bunch of pre-cut bits that interested me, and they lay in a stack, and it's hard for me to remember what came from where.
So for me, the reason I was drawn to this is the layering of not just colors, but the layering of forms and the layering of these sort of different ideas. Like I'm really intrigued right below that circle, you have these sort of, I don't know, like lined star shapes that are just like popping out there. So is it also a common? Are you working off of the collage materials, or are you able to just grab whole new ideas and add them on?
Feel like I'm a one-trick pony because the answer again is both of those,
Okay, no,
both of
that's
those
good.
things. Um, I definitely get ideas from the textures and the patterns that I'm seeing in the thing in whatever, but I also have a sort of lexicon that I lean into that just sort of comes naturally to, to fill in spaces when I think, oh, this is what it needs.
Yeah, it's a good piece, and this also is on paper, correct?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one's all paper.
I
Every
guess
once
the
in a while, some acetate comes in, but mostly paper.
okay. So, I don't know about you, but for me, working on paper is a double-edged sword because yes, it does save you space, but then you have to talk about framing and the expenses for all that kind of stuff. So, uh,
It's brutal, I know.
it really, they get you coming and going. So,
No
uh,
kidding.
when you're making a piece like this, I'm kind of curious. Oftentimes, when I'm talking to artists, we talk about rules that you set up for yourself, whether you're aware of them or not, as you're making the work. You're going to use X colors to do it. You're going to use these materials, and these are the kind of marks that you're making. Do you find yourself as you're making the work, like maybe midstream, you decide to break those rules? Or do
Oh, totally. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's
I,
part of your process is to invent something and then break it to reinvent it.
yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I definitely have some rules that just sort of stay there and they're not even conscious. Um, but I mean, that's almost how you know you're engaged with a piece, right? Is when suddenly the rule doesn't seem so important anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that it has its own demands, and so you can follow those.
Mm. One final one, and I've got a specific question about this. I'm kind of curious as how much of your work would you say is about experimentation versus what you may have in mind to make?
Mhm.
Is it
I would say experimentation is a greater proportion if I were to come up with a ratio.
okay?
Um,
That's what
so
I expected, but I just wanted to
yeah,
get you on tape for it.
yeah. So I work on many things at the same time. I always have a number of projects going precisely because, you need to sort of absorb, you need time for an experiment to sort of settle and see how you even feel about it and if it has any merit or if you should cover it up. So, um, yeah, I'd say it's almost always experimentation. In fact, when it gets to the point where I'm not experimenting, I feel I'm like it's lost its authenticity and that I should move on to something else.
Are you the kind of artist that will destroy work? Do you destroy your work after time? Like if it's
I
not
have a
up to
hard
snuff
time
for you?
wasting material.
Okay. Then do you
So
rework that?
I try to rework them. I do eventually get to a point where, something's been sitting around long enough and I've not found a place for it and
Hmm.
it's time to destroy it. But I give it a long time before, before I get there.
Give it time to ferment before it gets the guillotine. I totally get that.
Yeah, precisely.
So I wanted to ask you a question I ask a lot of artists about your beginnings in art. I'm kind of curious, at what point in your life, in your early career, did you decide, hey, I want to be an artist? I'm going to go for it.
Mm, it was pretty early. I was I thought I was going to be an academic because that was my family's history, I guess.
Right?
And
Did you study for something other than art?
I thought I was going to. I started to, and I was taking art classes at the same time. And I realized that I really only had the chops for art making.
Can
So when I, hmm?
can you tell me what it was that you were studying? I'm just curious.
Well, it was just general
Okay.
courses in college, that
Okay.
I was sort of like trying to decide what my major was going to be. And it was less than a year before I just realized that like the only thing I really had the ongoing attention for was art. And so I was like, all right, well, this is stupid. So if I'm gonna do this, I got to do it whole hog.
Uh,
And
so
so I
when you
really
when
turned
you
myself.
came out of college, did you know like yes, that was definitely the path you wanted to take? Or was it a little bumpy there in the first couple of years?
It's been bumpy all along,
Oh,
but
okay.
yes, I mean, right, coming out of college, I mean, it's a foolish bit of naivete to think, yeah, this is what I'm going to try to do. And, I've sprinkled in a good amount of teaching, as
Yeah,
many artists do in there. Um, and I teach English as a second language or as a new language, we say.
interesting.
Um, and that's a big part of me too. I really love that job. But
I ask those kind of questions because it to me it helps inform the kind of work that you're doing in some odd way. I've got a question for you that I should have asked when we were showing your works, but I want to make sure not to forget this. I want to talk about your titles for a minute.
mm-hmm.
How important are they to you? And is it the kind of thing, do you find yourself always titling the work after, or does the title come up before?
They're very important. Start with that to me. I feel like they're very important. Um, I have developed a bit of a writing practice,
Hmm.
and so they come out of that a lot of the time. Rarely do they emerge before the work is finished because I never know if I'm actually going to finish
Okay.
something. Um, but occasionally, ideas for titles will come up while I'm working on it. And then I have time while I'm working on it to sort of see if it sticks,
Hmm.
hone it, change, modify it a little bit.
Do you find that your titles are descriptors, or do you use the titles as an additional information for the viewer? Something new.
Mm, that's a really good question. Um, I don't think they're certainly not literal descriptors, right? I'm an abstract painter, but sometimes they're trying to think of a good metaphor. Um, they could act as bridges a little bit of
Okay.
what's happening with me in my mind. Sometimes, I mean, I have a proclivity to personify inanimate things.
Hmm.
And so they take on personalities. And so sometimes those are clues to the personalities that I'm
Hmm.
finding in the relationships between the materials and me.
Hmm. Interesting, because for me, I when I first came across your work, I felt your work was very concrete, but the titles almost seemed dreamlike. It's
Mm.
kind of the cross combination was kind of interesting. So speaking of viewers looking at your work, when you're making artwork, does the viewer ever enter your mind? Are you ever thinking about your audiences?
I try really hard not to. I really
Okay.
once I was making work for a very specific show that was a big deal, and I was really excited about it, and it was important to me. And in hindsight, I mean, it was hindsight happened almost instantaneously as soon as it was over.
Right.
I don't feel like that was my best work at all. And what happened after that was that all the effort and the energy that went into making it, the work that followed was really good. That was like the letdown of all
Hmm.
the energy and all the honesty that I could finally have with whatever I'm struggling with in that moment came out then. And that's happened in smaller degrees since then.
Hmm.
And my takeaway was really try not to, do something for someone else's benefit, which is, I guess, part of why I needed to spite the people who were telling me to work big.
So I find that a lot of times artists will say, yes, the viewer's on my mind, or no, or they aren't. I make the work for myself. But then once the work is out there, it's finished, it's hanging, um, you still do have viewers. Do you have any specific hopes that viewers walk away from your work with something? Do you want them to have anything specific, or are you open for all of their interpretations?
Mostly the latter.
Okay.
I want them to like it.
Okay.
But aside from that, um, no, I sort of respect the viewer to find what they want to find in it.
Good. I like that.
Mhm.
One of the questions I immediately thought of when I saw your work for the first time, and this is kind of an open-ended question. I want to talk about color, because color is so significant in your works in terms of the palettes that you use and the color combination. What does color mean to you?
Mm. Um, yeah, color is about relationships.
Okay.
All color is relative. People say, "What's your favorite color?" And I'm like, can't, there are colors, there are versions of every color that I gravitate to, but really the color that I choose has a lot to do with its relationship to the color next to it and around it and across from it and the conversation that it
Okay.
creates.
Do you ever consider your works when you look back at your uh, are they in any way autobiographical, or are you thinking maybe that they're separate from yourself?
No, I think everything I do is autobiographical.
Okay.
I don't think I can separate much. Um, but that said, of course, it's not literal and it's not narrative, but um,
Does emotion enter into the work?
yes, definitely. But it's hard to name the emotion. I sometimes I liken it to certain kinds of dancing or music that has no words. Music without words is emotional. You feel it. And sometimes you can say this is sad or this is, has a certain kind of energy. But often you don't actually have the ability to describe it and pin it down, but you can't deny that it's conveying feelings.
I think music without words should be a title of your next piece.
All
That would
right,
work.
I'll take that.
When you're working, are you zoned in or are you zoned out? Are you aware of every single mark, or is it like all of a sudden you have a finished picture in front of you?
Oh, that's such a hard question. Um, I, I guess it depends. Like I move in and out of those states, I guess,
Okay.
right? How
I would
close?
have
Like
guessed that
sometimes,
based on your work, based on what I'm seeing. Okay.
Right, some of the work is very close and intimate and detailed, and some of it is really big and broad and gestural. And I stand far away from the work at different moments and stand up close to it at others. So, right, it's the attempt to make all of it work. You need all of the different states of mind, I think.
That's that fits with the kind of work that you make. That's great. Time for just two more questions. This one I gotta ask: are there mediums that you haven't done yet that you'd like to experiment with?
Definitely. Um, and you mean visual art mediums or anything?
Could be any mediums, poetry, dance, music, sculpture, photography. Is there something that you're itching to move towards?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I am working on writing, and that's a real focus, side focus of mine. So, but I have some experience with that. The thing that I really want more experience with is printmaking. I love printmaking, and I do use printmaking, a very crude form of
Mhm.
printmaking in a lot of the work that I do. But the idea of like just really delving in and sticking with that for a while and exploring that sounds really
I think
delicious.
that would be a logical. I'm always trying to push artists to do more printmaking. I mean, I love it myself, but I think
Oh,
your work
great.
would lend it to some deep bite etchings and stuff like that would be
Mm,
great to see.
that would be
Um,
good. That'd be
Final
fun.
question I ask every artist: what does making art do for you?
So, because I'd mentioned that I teach English as a new language, I have a class that I've taught for 2 years now, where it is art and English together, experimenting with art and developing your language skills. So we've had conversations about this and many conversations, and we sort of zigzag back around with what this means for all of us. And the best definition that I've come to in those conversations is that art allows us to live in a world of contradictions. So it takes, right, all these opposites, and when I put them in art, they can sit together peaceably enough in the same place. And
That works. That's great. I'm gonna have to mull that over for a little while. Well, Melissa, I can't thank you enough for coming by and talking with me today. Fan of your work. I can't wait to see it in person. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch Art Show today. We really appreciate your support, especially if you can like and subscribe to Art Show. That helps Art Show get pushed out to more people. If you have any questions, put them in the comments section. If we can't answer them, we'll pass them along to Melissa. But again, Melissa, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
no, real pleasure. It's really fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.